Alright everybody, we are here with number 15 of the NCPL Commander Draft Analysis. We're going to be looking at Blade Skylight's team today. So this was one of the strangest ratings I've given in terms of you can see it's very offensive oriented and the scores look small and then huge, right? So it was really strange because, I've been watching Blade's games and the team is really good, and I think he's trying to adjust to NCPL and how we play because I do know Blade from over at PBR and he does well over there, so I think this is just an adjustment for him, but his team is good. I think it's just missing a couple things, which I'll get into later in the draft, so I did take a lot of notes. So overall though, I scored his team a total of 39. So 39. So he has lots of things going. It just there's things like he has Inteleon and then he has Cramorant. He has Skylight and then he has Sirfetch'd. Whereas I don't know if he needs both. While both are good, I don't know if he needs both. Obviously Skylight is faster than Sirfetch'd, but Sirfetch'd has first impression and Scrappy, right? So but let's hop into the first category here is offense, which I scored a 7. So looking at his team, you're probably like, well, why did you score this a 7? Because every single Pokemon on his team is offensive. So it's just like I just mentioned, he has a couple now I know they do different things, but they add up to this. They have the same stab attacks and they have the same type of weaknesses. So Skylight and Sirfetch'd having a weakness to Fairy, also being a close combatter. I think both learn knockoff. And Cramorant and Inteleon both being weak to electric. Now he has another electric weakness in Masquerain. He has Go Lurk, I understand that, and he has more Peko. But the thing is they'll be doing the same attack. So it's like, when you're team building, you have two Mons. If that team has a strong Fairy, I mean those two Mons are now automatically at a disadvantage. Obviously circumstantial, but you understand what I mean, right? So that is kind of why it's at a 7, but that's not to say his Mons aren't really good at being offensive. So Inteleon, while it kind of lacks move pool, we do get hidden power this draft, so that really helps it out. And its move pool is good enough. I mean, it has the option to go choice specs with the Hydro Pump, Ice Beam, Barrack Pulse, U-turn set, or the Focus Energy Scope Lens Snipe Shot set, where you're going to be wanting to crit it, be landing those crits. So there isn't too much else that Inteleon is going to do outside of those two sets. I did write down that it does have a Swords Dance set that it could do. It does have Liquidation, it has Sucker Punch, it has U-turn. It has Acrobatics, which I think is really interesting because if a grass type is wanting to switch into it, you could utilize this with an item, obviously to use the item and then get that Acrobatics boost and have that Swords Dance on top of it. So it is possible. This is another thing I want to get into with his offense is I think not just his offense, his team. I think a part of the problem sometimes in his matches is his team is very predictable. A lot of the Pokemon on this team are going to be running 4 attacks, and that's a lot. That's mostly what they're going to do in a lot of games. But he can be tricky with some Mons. I mean, Skylight has a ton of support options. It actually is probably his best support Pokemon on the team, having access to Memento, Will-O-Wisp, T-Wave, Wish, Teleport, Destiny Bond, Disable, Protect, Toxic, Memento. And the I'll get into that set, that cool set that I found out. But yeah, it has a ton of support. So I mean, this is where I think his offense kind of needs to go. not his offense, his team. He needs to switch up his movesets and, you know, kind of try and start catching people off guard with, you know, movesets that are specific to the matchup, specific to the Pokemon that it needs to come into and beat. But yeah, so moving on from Inteleon, because there isn't too much. I do want to mention Inteleon does get Icicle Spear as well, and Ice Shards, so those are some to mention, but I mean, it's so fast it doesn't really need those at base 120 speed, especially in this tier draft. But yeah, moving on, we'll go on to Morpeko. So something I did different too is, I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, but I color coded my notes so that I can easily recognize the offense stuff and defensive stuff when I'm talking, and that way I don't spend 30 minutes on offense and, you know, 30 seconds on hazards, right? But Morpeko, so this one I was kind of indifferent about on, you know, being a tier 4, trading for something that might be better for his team in terms of offense. Morpeko is a great offensive Pokemon. It has good speed and the ability to sweep with that Aura Wheel speed boosting. But the issue is what we just seen in this last match, I believe, is people taking advantage of that Aura Wheel and, you know, bringing Protect and then protecting so that they don't have the electric hit, and then they take the Dark instead, and then they can stab the Dark and you know, effectively KO it. So easy to take advantage of if you're prepared like that. So but Morpeko does have Nasty Plot, it does have a Fake Out, Parting Shot, and then you can switch into a setup Pokemon as a defensive set. Rapid Spin as another defensive move, but offensively, sorry, it has Aura Wheel, Crunch, Psychic Fang, Seed Bomb, Stomping Tantrum, Bullet Seed, Ice Fang, Foul Play, Outrage, and that's kind of where we are with the offensive moves. So it does have good coverage as an offensive Pokemon. I don't know if I would say this is like a mon that should be brought offensively every single game. I think it has great ability to get in other Pokemon, especially with that Fake Out, Parting Shot. You get a little bit of chip, you can break a Sash if it's a Sash, get that Parting Shot off because it's a faster Pokemon, base 97 speed, get into something that either wants to set up or wall break. Like perfect example is, you know, Go Lurk, right? Really good defensive stats, 89 HP, 80 defense, 80 special defense. A Parting Shot is gonna let it come in super easy and fire off a Banded Poltergeist or EQ or whatever you have if it's a setup Iron Defense Body Press, right? So I think Morpeko could be used really well in that way. But it's still good offensively as well with the Banded Aura Wheel set. It can sweep, you know, or just Life Orb, Expert Belt, since it has good coverage in Aura Wheel, Crunch, Stomping Tantrum, Fire Fang, Ice Fang, Psychic Fangs. Yeah, so I will mention its defensive stuff more in depth when we get to that, but that is what I see it offensively. Offensively, I will mention too, Sub Nasty Plot is a totally viable set with it. It does have Thunderbolt, it does have yeah, Dark Pulse, and we get Hidden Power. So Hidden Power is a really huge key point to these Pokemon that don't really have big movesets, i.e. Inteleon, Morpeko especially, in the special side. Nasty Plot Sub is a totally viable set. If you don't need that Dark Pulse, you can run Hidden Power to cover something better, or vice versa, right? So I'll continue to mention that Hidden Power, but moving to Glade. So I kind of mentioned its defensive stuff already, but I will mention it more in depth later. Offensively though, it can do either physical or special, and I think this is a really, really important factor when you're playing in draft, is your Pokemon being able to do both, or being able to do more than one thing. Not to say that doing more than one thing is bad, because some Pokemon do it perfectly, you know, like wall breakers and stuff like that, but Gallade having so many options physically or specially is great. Now, its special attack isn't good, but it has good coverage, and that's what makes it viable to run. So, but offensively, we have Swords Dance, Close Combat, Zen Headbutt, Knockoff, and then you have Drain Punch, Earthquake. You have all this coverage, Dual Chop, Fire Punch. What else we got? Ice Punch, Poison Jab, Psycho Cut, which I would argue I would probably run over Zen Headbutt any day because I don't want to deal with that miss. Unless for some reason I need that little extra damage to get the KO, but I would fully rather 100%. And then you got Stone Edge. Solar Blade is another thing too, in the sun obviously, but and then Thunder Punch, Triple Axle, and X Scissor. So tons and tons of coverage physically. On the special side, we have Priority and Vacuum Wave. We have Thunderbolt. We have, where else? We have Psyshock, Psychic. We have Dazzling Gleam, Magical Leaf, Grass Knot, Energy Ball. Expanding Force is another thing too. Future Sight I will get into as well for that defensive supportive options, and Draining Kiss I will also mention in the defensive supportive options, but that is another thing it does have. And then Calm Mind. So and you obviously have Calm Mind, Bulk Up, Swords Dance, so you have a Aura Sphere as well. Sorry, you have all this coverage and all these things that you can do to catch your opponent off guard. If your opponent's brought somebody specifically for a physical Gallade and you have a sub Calm Mind special Gallade, well, I mean, they're gonna have to deal with that stressfully on their toes, right? Not much more to mention on Gallade's offense here. Those are kind of all the things that it has. I will get into the other things that it can do, but again, the fact that he can do all these things, being tricky and having different sets is going to be really, really good. So especially on this type of Pokemon. So next up is Excelgor. Next up is Excelgor. So this is one of the Pokemon that I marked down as trade. He made a recent trade, and that's kind of what's prompted me to say it's not as useful as the Pokemon that he traded for. They do similar things, so but yeah, Excelgor offensively, I mean, it's gonna come in. It's either gonna Final Gambit, set up spikes, or do as much damage as it can, or Toxic Spikes, U-turn out, or just get KO'd, because that 40 base 40 defense, base 60 special defense, it's not really living, but it does guarantee that it's either going to get a Final Gambit, spikes, or an attack because of its 145 base speed. Pair that with a Focus Sash, you could set up 2 spikes or whatever, right? So really not much more to mention with Excelgor. I mean, you could do some really interesting things with him. He has Infestation. He does have Recover. He has things to lower their attack or special attack, or their special defense. But you're taking away what it's actually good at. So setting up spikes or Final Gambit, right? Which I think Final Gambit, if he was going to use Excelgor, which I have seen him use, I think Final Gambit is probably just the best option. You're gonna take out one Mon, or almost KO one, and with the type of offensive team that I think Blade has, I think just trading at Hyper Offense is what Excelgor should do, in my opinion. So he has Mons that are gonna be specs, or gonna do special attacks. He doesn't need another one, in my opinion. So not a bad Mon though. I think before the Masquerain trade, I think Toxic Spikes and Spikes were super viable for his team. It would allow Inteleon to clean up the kills better, or Chinchino, or allow Sirfetch'd to wall break and get those KOs. That little extra chip damage would make a big difference. But with that said, he does have Go Lyric with Stealth Rock and Masquerade with Webs, which I think are 10 times better than Spikes and Toxic Spikes. Especially with the amount of people that do have ways to get around Spikes and Toxic Spikes as well. So Stealth Rock's just being the better of the two. So next up we have we have Surfetched. So this is kind of like what I was saying before, is his team can be predictable in this sort of sense, because this is Mon that's just going to come with 4 attacks, and he has 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 Pokemon that are going to do the exact same thing, come with 4 attacks, unless you start to get really tricky and effective with your movesets that are specific to the matchup, which we haven't quite seen to the fullest extent yet. But I totally think he can do this. He has lots of time left. I mean, to try and maybe not lots of time left to, you know, get into playoffs or anything like that, but lots of time left to adjust to NCPL and figure out what his team wants to do and kind of get more comfortable with it and try and improve his score. So but Surfetched here, we're gonna have Close Combat, Knockoff, First Impression, Brave Bird or Poison Jab, Brick Break if you need to break the screens, Dual Wing Beat is an option. Yeah, Swords Dance as well you could run, but that's kind of really where it ends. That's really all he has. You could do a neat Rest Hawk set, since he is actually decently bulky with 95 defense, 82 special defense, 62 HP. You could do things like that, but generally that 4 attacks with the Scrappy is going to be really nice. Close Combat is not going to be immune. You can just basically fire off banded close combats as much as you like. Come in First Impression as much as you like. So, but again, that goes with his offense. You set up the webs, and Surfetched is somehow, you know, faster than you after the webs. You're going to be taking a base 135 attack, close combat, and it's going to do very much hurt. So this is what that Pokemon's good for. It's one of those things where I said sometimes it's you don't really need it. This Pokemon has Scrappy, close combat, it's strong, it's bulky, has decent coverage, gets First Impression, perfect. So next up was Cramorant. This was another Mon that I marked down as a potential trade Mon for his team. Alright, I want to check something. Okay. So the reason that I wrote it down as potential trade Mon, now I know I was not a big fan of Swanna, which is the exact same typing as this Pokemon. I really hate ×4 weaknesses, especially in draft. I just think in a draft where hidden power is usable, ×4 weaknesses are just, in my opinion, awful. So, and he already has Inteleon and Masquerain, which is another electric weakness. Both have water attacks. He has Rapid Spin on Morpeko, he has Defog on Surfetched if he needs it, he has Defog on Masquerain. He doesn't really need this Pokemon, in my opinion. But with that said, it does have capabilities to be offensive. Surf, Brave Bird with that Gulp Missile, really going to be annoying, probably going to hurt a lot. Ice Beam, Hydro Pump, Hurricane, Superpower, Throat Chop, does have option to be physical or special. A really neat set that I tried out was oh, there we go. The set that I tried out, which was actually really annoying, at least it looked like it on my end, was Stockpile, Roost, Dive, Brave Bird. I can't remember why I did. Oh yeah, I did physical because he gets the Brave Bird and he just has the accuracy. But you could also, I did the physical because the Gauntlet Missile can lower lower defense. So it becomes really annoying. You boost your defenses. It has roost. It has pretty good HP and special defense. Its defense is base 55, but with that stockpile, it's not that bad. I ran Wakan Berry just in case there was an electric type attack, but you could easily run, you know, leftovers or something else that might be more useful for the matchup. But it was really annoying for the opponents because I would lower their defense, paralyze them, dive hits, brave bird hits. I can roost up. I have +3 on both my defenses. Extremely annoying to deal with. It was annoying on ladder. So the thing is, people can bring toxic and shit like that, or will-o-wisp. So, but that is an interesting set that you could run, and it would definitely catch your opponent off guard. You would be able to chip down a decent amount of Pokemon. So, and the reason that it's dive, if some of you don't know, Gulp Missile only works if you use Surf or Dive. So that's why. But Gulp Missile, when hit after Surf or Dive, attacker takes 1/4 max HP, -1 to their defense or paralysis. So it's extremely annoying. You take damage, you're -1 defense. It's like if you attack Garchomp, you get hit by the Rough Skin and it lowers your defense, right? It's super annoying. So that was a really neat set that I found out. But again, I do think this is one of his Pokemon that he can trade to have something that might be more useful to his team that he could bring more often. So with that said, we're gonna move on to Cinccino. So there's a ton on Cinccino. It just has a massive move pool. Can run Choice Band, can run Heavy Duty Boots if it wants to come in often. It can run King's Rock to be annoying. Tail Slap, Triple Axle, Bullet Seed, Rock Blast, Knockoff, U-Turn, Gunk Shot, Iron Tail, Play Rough, Seed Bomb. Yeah, I mean, like what's more to say? That's an enormous move pool. You can basically cover any matchup that you want. So this Pokemon should be brought almost every single match. There's no reason it shouldn't. The problem that he's probably having is Cinccino and Inteleon do the same thing. In my opinion, Cinccino does it better since it has better coverage. But the problem is he has to bring Inteleon, so then he has to bring 2 frail Pokemon that are fast that want to clean up. So that would lead him to either run, like a banded Cinccino or a spexed Inteleon, or he can run both. But the problem is now he's got 2 spots on his team that are want to do the same thing. So Cinccino, an awesome Pokemon. Obviously, we've seen that it has its downfalls with that accuracy, costing some people some games. But anyways, yeah, I mean, it does have some options defensively, which I'll get into when we come back around. But next up we have Golurk, which I think is one of his better Pokemon here. Now, he's kind of had Golurk taken advantage of with that Poltergeist, knowing that it needs an item for it to work. But he still has good coverage. He has Earthquake, Heat Crash, Darkest Lariat, still has Shadow Punch, has Drain Punch, has No Guard, Dynamic Punch, No Guard, Stone Edge, which is really nice. And then it has Stealth Rocks, so you could run a Banded set and just have Stealth Rocks on there, set up your rocks, switch out if you're forcing the opponent to fear the Earthquake or whatever strong stab move or strong effective move you have. So but offensively, it does have a Rock Polish set as well, which you could use. Its speed is base 55, which is bad in OU terms, but like in this draft 55, I mean, after a Rock Polisher, you will outspeed a lot of things. So just for number wise, I will tell you guys the exact number of where Rock Polish puts that at. So Rock Polish, if you run a Adamant set and you Rock Polish, it will put you at 418. So in this type of draft where all these lower tier Pokemon, 418 is a lot. So that is totally a set that he could bring. We've seen people utilize a rock polish set on slower Pokemon, and it'd be totally viable and, you know, help them win games. I.e. Zeb, able to run that rock polish on Torterra. I think Golurk can do the exact same thing, especially with that no guard. It could run, you know, rock polish, earthquake, dynamic punch, and heat crash, right? If it doesn't need that ghost stab. But one of the interesting things about Golurk and its typing and its stab, its ability to run that iron defense body press set and force the opponent to fear the ghost attack. You know, if they're gonna be sending in a ghost type to deal with that body press, they need to fear a Darkest Lariat, they need to fear a Poltergeist or a Shadow Punch or a Phantom Force. So that is a really interesting point about Golurk and how he's able to utilize that set as well really well. So something I would like to see from the Golurk, especially, you know, especially since it's able to do that on his team, and his team has the options to do that. Not to mention he has sticky webs, which makes Golurk extremely scary, knocking everybody's speed down by 1, making Golurk, you can run a Jolly Golurk. This would probably outspeed a ton of Pokemon, so be terrifying to deal with, especially if they're running items on other Pokemon. A Banded Poltergeist, if they don't have a normal type Pokemon, is going to really hurt, or a dark type Pokemon. So so he does have good defensive options, which I guess not like a lot of defensive options, but he has defensive options, which I will mention in a second here. But last but not least, offensively, we have Masquerain. So offensively, I don't think you should just run the 4 attacks that it could run, since you have a ton of Pokemon already potentially doing this. Inteleon basically having to do this, and then Chinchino as well, more than likely going to be doing this. You don't need 3 Pokemon that are going to do that, especially with the coverage Chinchino has and Inteleon. It's totally enough coverage, especially with the rest of your Pokemon. So the offensive set that I would recommend that this has is the Quiver set. So Quiver Dance, Roost, Bug Buzz, and then whatever coverage you need. And then with this, the thing about that's cool about Masquerain over like Volcarona is Masquerain gets Intimidate. So it has base 62 defense, which isn't super great, but the Intimidate really helps it come in and do that Quiver set very, very well. Barring it being × 4 weak to rocks, you could totally just run heavy duty boots on this Quiver set. But what I would probably do is just run 252 HP. Probably check the defensive EVs, see what you need to run defensively, put in as much as you need, and then run the rest in speed or special attack. But I would probably put in speed so you can fire off a Quiver Dance, hopefully before the opponent. But that Intimidate coming in on, you know, a fighting type or something like that, which there is a ton of fighting types in the Sword division. You have Toxicroak, Machoke, you have Passimian, Hitmontop, Sirfetch'd, Gallade, oh, that's his team. Scrafty, Monferno, which I probably wouldn't do it on since Flare Blitz will probably really hurt. Hariyama as well. With all those fighting types, you could totally run this Intimidate Quiver Dance set. Your ×4 resisting fighting moves. I think it's ×4. Yeah, ×4. Resisting these fighting moves, come in on the Intimidate, easily set up the Quiver Dance. You could totally put in Sub instead of that coverage room and just run Bug Buzz. If the matchup lets you run that, then I would suggest the Sub, since Sub is just, in my opinion, like super busted on Switch. But yeah, so that's it offensively. I mean, it sounds a lot higher of a score than I put it, but the thing is he has, it looks like to me there'll be some problems in team building, since a lot of Pokemon do the same thing, and then it becomes kind of redundant because, you know, you have Inteleon and has the right coverage, well now Chinchino is useless. Or, you know, you have Glade, you don't need First Impression, Sirfetch'd is kind of useless, you know, or you don't need the Scrappy, right? And Glade has knockoff too, so it just, you know, things like that. But defensively, so this is, sorry, excuse me. Holy shit, spent 30 minutes on this already. Wow, power of writing notes. So defensively, I wrote this as a 5. Now, it is a very bad score on the defense, but his Pokemon do have defensive options. The problem is his team isn't super bulky. They generally don't want to be switching in too often and absorbing attacks, or taking a lot of chip damage from rocks or toxics, anything like that. So, but the defensive options, I mean, Inteleon has Haze, Morpeko has a Fake Out Parting Shot, which I actually think is a super viable set for his team. You Fake Out Parting Shot into that Go Lurk, you know, on an Earthquake Stab or something like that. Golurk will easily eat that up with its base defenses and HP, fire off a really strong Earthquake or whatever move he needs to fire off. You could Parting Shot into Masquerain, help it set up, Parting Shot into Chinchino. Chinchino can you know, force the opponent to switch, and he can get Chinchino can get a U-turn off or some more chip damage. Go into Inteleon, set up Focus Energy. Super viable set, I think, for his team defensively and to help his momentum, and just help him do what his team wants to do, and that's attack. So doing that often is going to let him attack, right? So, but the other thing that Morpeko has, which I think was really, I don't know why I didn't even know this, but Morpeko gets Rapid Spin, which I think is really great. With its speed, now its defenses don't really help it run Rapid Spin, but you can get Rapid Spin off on a good switch, forcing the opponent out. You get the Rapid Spin. We totally see that it's viable on a Pokemon that has weak defenses. Laurel did it just last week with Hitmonlee. On a Pokemon with bad defenses and HP, you can totally get that Rapid Spin off if you can force the opponent out. So very, very viable option to run on Morpeko basically every week, just to make sure the opponent doesn't get the rocks up, since you have a ×4 weakness, and another weakness to the rocks. You have Excelgor and Masquerain. So now Glade, in my opinion, best supportive Pokemon for his team. I think if you have Sirfetch'd and Glade, you just run Glade as a support Pokemon on your team. It has really, really fantastic special defense, and has good enough HP to make this totally work. And then it's a fast Pokemon on top of that. So with its support options, as I mentioned earlier, it has Memento, Will-O-Wisp, T-Wave, Wish, Toxic, Teleport, Destiny Bond, Disable, Protect, Memento, Trick. I think I mentioned Teleport. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna backtrack real quick here. Something I don't think I mentioned in the offensive set for Glade, which would be really, really cool for him to run, totally catch somebody off guard. Run Sing, Blunder Policy, Swords Dance, and then, you know, close combat and whatever coverage you need, probably knockoff. But that would be a totally, totally cool offensive set for his team. So, but anyways, the other options that it has here, where are we? Okay, yeah. The other options it has is Reflect and Light Screen. It has Mean Look. It has Magic Coat, Future Sight, Imprison. Now I know, like, those, like, Future Sight and Prison, those sound like silly, but like the thing is Glade has the ability to stop Pokemon from, you know, psychic moves are totally are very, very common. So for example, I just want to see somebody who's got set up. Give me 1 sec here, guys. Okay, so Blade goes in against Paul. Okay, Paul has Meloetta. Blade knows Paul has been setting up Meloetta with Calm Mind, you know, every single match or something like that. He brings Gallade with Imprison, Calm Mind, and he sets up himself. He does Imprison so that they can't Calm Mind. He sets up Calm Mind. It puts the opponent in a really tough spot. He's going to get set up on. Things like that. I know it sounds really like, well, that's really specific. Well, I mean, these are the things that, this is how you're going to beat these people who are running things that are, you know, run every single week, by looking into it like that and researching. So, but I really think that Reflect, Light Screen, Teleport, Future Sight is a totally viable set for him. I don't think he has, you know, he doesn't have Recover. Or, you know, anything Will-O-Wisp, Toxic. One of the sets that I think is totally viable is, since he has all the moves for it, and he's fast, Toxic, Disable, Protect, and then, you know, Psyshock, Psychic, or Psycho Cut, or Close Combat, or whatever it is. Anything like that. So I think this is like super good for his team. I hope Blade hears this. I think Gallade can be a really awesome support Pokemon, especially with having the Justified. He can totally help out Golurk, make sure he doesn't get that ban knocked off or whatever he's running, and just make sure people can't spam knockoff. He's not weak to it. He doesn't have good defense, but you set up that Reflect to be super annoying. You up his attack, now he's going to hit you with a boosted Psycho Cut. He has good base attack at 125. It's going to be super annoying. So I really hope he sees that. I think that's super good for his team. A annoying defensive option that he could run as well is Rest, Sleep Talk, Calm Mind, Draining Kiss. Just super annoying to deal with if the opponent's not expecting setup, if the opponent doesn't have a trick or anything to deal with Gallade. So since there really isn't much fairies in this draft, and I don't think so, I mean, everybody gets Shadow Ball, but I don't think there is a ton of strong ghost types in this draft. Palisand, Frostlass, Mega Banette, Hoopa. Yeah, I think that would be fine, and you're boosting with Calm Mind anyways, so. But yeah, so I won't stick on him too much, but I think, say it 10th time, sorry, but best supporter Pokemon for his team. I think if you're going to use Gallade, I think it should be in that way and let Sirfetch'd do the damage. Since Sirfetch'd can set up if it wants, it's going to hit just as hard or harder. It has Scrappy, it has Knockoff, it has Close Combat, and it gets First Impression, so it's super oppressive to deal with. But next we have Excelgor. As I mentioned earlier, it's going to be doing Toxic Spikes, U-Turn, Final Gambit, could do Infestation, Encore. I think it has Encore. Yeah. I mean, it can do things like that as well, so that's all it has. So it's for a tier 4, in my opinion. It's unless you have a much harder hitting team, I just feel like the spikes are a lot less useful than the webs. Next up we have Sirfetch'd. I mean, he has Defog. It's totally an option. I've seen it on like Conkeldurr before. Since Conkeldurr forces a lot of switches, Defog is not a bad move to run on it. If you need it on your team, you could totally run this on Sirfetch'd if you needed that 4th slot on Morpeko, or if you needed Cramorant to be a booster. or Masquerade to be a booster, or set up just webs and have 3 attacks, or 2 attacks and roost. That way you kind of spread the load instead of, you know, Masquerade running roost, sticky webs, defog, and then whatever bug buzz or something, right? So next we have the Cramorant, which I mentioned. It does have Skull, Defog, Roost. Gulp Missile, Surf would be super annoying as a defensive Pokemon. I hope that my voice is being up here. I didn't realize I was like bending down there. So Gulp Missile, Surf just be super annoying to deal with. A quarter of your health is a lot, man. Like, when I was doing that to people online, it's super annoying. I would be annoyed if somebody did that to me and I was not prepared for it. So if you do decide to keep Cramorant, I think that would be wise to bring him a little bit more often. That Gulp Missile makes it worth it, in my opinion, and in some ways, you know, decent still to have on your team, but sharing that weakness and having a ×4 weakness, not for me. Next we have Chinchino. I did write down, like, you know, Charm and U-turn. I mean, you could run it. Chinchino's super fast. Charm lowers it by 2, so definitely survive an attack. Maybe survive an attack, I don't know. Unless the opponent's banded and it's like really strong as it is, it might not. Chinchino doesn't have the greatest defenses, but Chinchino does have base 85 HP, I think. Base 75 HP, which is actually decent. So that's an option, but I mean, Morpeko is going to do that 10 times better, in my opinion. The Fake Out and then the Parting Shot, you break a Sash, and then you get the Parting Shot into another Pokemon. So Golurk, just as I mentioned, its defenses is going to allow it to come in off a Parting Shot or just switch in on something and fire off, you know, that you know, Banded or Life Orb or whatever he has. Attack, Shadow Punch, Poltergeist, Body Press, Earthquake, but it does have Toxic and Trick as well. If you run a banded Golurk and you know the opponent's just continuously switching into your Golurk, you can be F you, buddy, Trick, screw their wall, right? Super viable on him since people are gonna have things to deal with that Poltergeist. There is a lot of normal types in the draft, and there are some flying types as well. So having 2 moves that can be immune, I think Trick is a good option on Golurk as well, to break your opponent's walls. So and last but not least, defensively, we have the Masquerade. So the Sticky Web, I think, is a fantastic option for his team. His team is super offensive. Now his team is fast, but that, you know, it doesn't mean you can't run webs. And the thing is people are going to be bringing Scarfers to beat your fast Pokemon. That webs is going to really set them back. I mean, I can use my games as an example. You know, Norman set up webs on me, and I had a I think it was Scarfed Passimian, and I just didn't outspeed. It's, you know, its webs are still super strong, and they're super strong in draft, especially when you have an offensive team like this. I almost think Masquerade should be brought every single game with webs, predictable or not. Don't send it first out every single game, but totally should bring it. It's so good for his team. It really puts a lot of pressure on the opponent to get webs off the field so they can, you know, do something productive. But it does also have Defog, Roost, Haze, Tailwind, and U-turn, so it can totally Tailwind and U-turn into something else. Golurk has the defenses to do it, Cramorant, Sirfetch'd as well. You know, you could do things like that, right? So with that double speed, Golurk with double speed, holy fuck. With its base 80 defenses and 89 HP, you turn Tailwind, U-turn into that Golurk. It's gonna be, and the opponents, you know, brought items on every single Pokemon. You Poltergeist, and just start breaking holes, right? These are things that I think we should see from his team. So I think we will see them. So, but that's all we got for defensive options. I mean, you could get even crazier. This is just, you know, my notes. You know, there's definitely some crazier things that I've seen out there. So we have speed as well. So the speed is totally, you can see it all over the board. I mean, Masquerade's pretty fast. Chinchino, super fast, 361. Inteleon, base 120. Cramorant 85. Excelgor, base 140. Gallade, base 7, base 80. Morpeko, 97. So his team is super fast. And then you put webs on top of that. I just totally. I rank this a 9. This is a very fast team in the Sword Division with speed control in webs. Can keep rapid spinning the web rocks off the field. He can control it, make sure the opponent doesn't set webs up on him, or if they have magic bounce or magic coat, he can deal with it. So definitely a 9. And that speed is going to really elevate his offense and his momentum, especially if he has webs up. He could potentially just, if he takes out, 2 Pokemon, he gets webs up, or he gets webs or Tailwind in, gets in Golurk, gets in Surfetched, or Specs Inteleon or something like that, or Focus Energy Inteleon, and he just sweeps four Pokemon or breaks holes into 2 Pokemon, basically breaks the opponent down. I think the speed is really helping him in terms of this will really help him bring these wins home if he can control the speed and make sure he is always the fastest, and allowing those slower Pokemon on his team who hit really hard like Surfetched and Golurk to be faster is going to do a ton of work for his team. So hazards, hands down a 10. He has Toxic Spikes, Stealth Rocks, Sticky Web, Rapid Spin on Morpeko. He has Defog on 1, 2, 3 Pokemon. And then of course he has Magic Coat, I think, as well on Gallade. Just the amount of hazard control he has and the hazards that he can set up is just phenomenal. Definitely one of the best attributes to his team. I think he needs to utilize these more to his advantage. Rocks can be super good. There's no reason you can't run Rocks on Golurk and Golurk be an attacker as well. U-turn, Tailwind U-turn. You have those rocks up already. Those rocks are chipping in the opponent. Finally, you get Golurk in. Golurk just cleans up because they've been chipped enough. Totally important to his team. You take away those hazards and hazard control, his team has a really hard time dealing with them, since he has ×4 weakness to rocks. He has another weakness to rocks in Excelgor. His Pokemon are frail as they are, aside from Golurk and Cramorant and Gallade special defense. So hazards, hands down a 10. Definitely he did a good job drafting on hazards here. A little bit of an overlap on what I think he wants here, but totally fixable. He still has 5 or 6 games left, I think, in the draft. So momentum at 8. So this one, despite his speed and the amount of U-turns he has and stuff like that, he doesn't have a Pokemon that's like how do I explain it? That's gonna go in and it's gonna stay in. It's gonna continue to do damage. I mean, like I said, Golurk can be that Pokemon. Surfetch can be that Pokemon, especially with Scrappy. But that's behind Sticky Webs and Tailwind. So once he has those things set up, I think that's where his momentum starts. But he does have good momentum options in terms of Parting Shot, Volt Switch on Morpeko. He has U-turn on Excelgor. He has U-turn on Masquerain, U-turn on Inteleon, U-turn on Chinchino. So he has a lot of ways to switch in and switch out. The problem is all those Pokemon that have U-turn, they don't have many things to switch into unless they're specifically going to resist something. And if they don't, they're going to be hit hard or KO'd. So that's kind of why it's an 8 and not a 10, despite all the speed and momentum he does have going. He doesn't have like that snowballing momentum, aside from a Quiver Dance or some weird sets that I mentioned with, Cramorant or Gallade, things like that. It's not super apparent. He's got to work for those snowball wins. So unlike, for example, not to say that Chris doesn't work for these Bellawesome wins, but Bellawesome is Bellawesome can almost come in anytime in the match, strength zap them right in the head, take away their attack, Quiver Dance up, and sweep 5 Pokemon. So his team, Blade's team, cannot do that. So he does not have the same tools or the same amount of bulk that Chris's team has to do that. So that's why it's an 8. I still think that's a good score. You know, despite the way Blade's performing, his team is good. Like I said, I think this is just an adjustment for Blade. Seeing how everybody plays, because man, like, there's a huge difference, guys, in Switch players and Showdown players. What I found with Switch players is Switch players were just like attack, 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 screens, attack, setup, attack. Every Pokemon had setup. You know, when you come from things like that, I don't know if Blade came from that, but I'm just trying to give you an example. And you try and switch to a whole group that has a different style of playing. Sometimes the adjustment is hard. Even myself, I'm having a hard time adjusting to it since I was playing on Switch for a little bit there. It was pretty hard for me to come back to that this style of game. So I think this is just an adjustment. I think Blade's going to come back really strong at the end of the season here. It looks like he's figuring out his team. That Masquerain trade, maybe it's weird to somebody, but the Intimidate, the times 4 weakness for fighting types. Since there's a lot of fighting types, there's a lot of people that spam close combats or drain punches. That ability to Quiver Dance, set up sticky webs, I think he understands what he wants to do with his team. I think he's just got to put a couple more pieces together in there. So before we close off here, I'm just going to mention those pieces that I think would be really good for his team. So as I mentioned, Excelgor and Cramorant are the ones that I think should be traded. Cinccino was a thought as well, but the thing is like, Cinccino's only a thought because Inteleon's doing the same thing, except Cinccino is actually better. It's just Inteleon's a captain, so it has to come. But anyways, yeah, Excelgor and Cramorant. So the T4s that I wrote in were Articuno G, enormous setup potential. His team wants to set up. This is kind of what Blade's team does. It wants to be offensive. It wants to attack. It's very similar to Norman's team. It has very fast Pokemon. It has a lot of Pokemon that want to set up and do. I mean, Norman's team has like Puke and Muku and Trevenant and stuff like that. But like, Norman's team was based on like setting up Articuno G or somebody, because he was sticky webbing. He was king shielding. I guess I would say it's kind of a mesh between Norman and Chris's team with that webs and that setup and attacking. You add Articuno G in there, you get competitive. You now block Parting Shot. You now block Defog. You're making sure the opponent can't get those webs off the field or those rocks. That is going to help Golurk or Inteleon or Sirfetch'd or Cinccino clean up. Really good Pokemon for his team, not to mention the Dark weakness. I know it's another Flying weakness. That would be, or another Rock weakness. That would be 3 with Masquerain and Excelgor. But if he gets rid of Excelgor, that will only be 2. But that Dark weakness, the thing is if he brings Gallade and Gallade as a support Pokemon and Articuno G, Gallade has Justified and he's not weak to Dark. You switch in Gallade, you get that boost. You have Psycho Cut, or you Wish, or whatever the supportive option you ran on Gallade. It's just super annoying to get that one boost on Gallade, and then he Psycho Cuts you just to extra chip damage. But Articuno G, I think, is a super good Pokemon for his team. The other T4 was Xatu. Just a little bit more momentum. Again, make sure rocks and other webs or spikes or T-spikes aren't on his side of the field. He's blocking them. Getting that teleport too is good for Golurk. The only thing is they're both weak to knockoff. But teleport would allow like Cinccino to come in, Inteleon to come in, Sirfetch'd to come in, things like that. So the other thing too that I noticed is, now there isn't too many fairies in the draft, but there is fairy moves. He doesn't have anything that resists fairy on his team, so if he has a strong Pokemon that's going to be firing off Moonblast or Dazzling Gleam, he's going to have a little bit of a problem with that. So I wrote down Savelli Poison, Magmortar, Aggron. Potential, these are not my first options to go to. Articuno G and Xatu are the first T4 options that I would mention over Aggron. And these T5 Pokemon that I'm going to mention are the ones that I would mention over Savelli Poison. and make mortar. So T5 Bellossom. he needs something for Earthquake. Especially if he gets rid of Cramorant and Excelgor. Golurk doesn't want to come in every time on those Earthquakes, and Masquerain could come in as well, but that would allow him to switch up who he's going into. Not to mention Bellossom, just another Pokemon that's going to benefit off Webs or Tailwind or Rocks. Another Pokemon to set up, another Pokemon for him to be fearful. It also gives him some Grass Stab, which he needs, especially if he gets rid of Excelgor, since Excelgor has the Energy Ball. Bellossom setup Pokemon. It can be a supportive Pokemon, super annoying to deal with. You wall break with Surfetch, Golurk, Teleon, Chinchino. You get in that Bellossom a little bit late. The opponent still has 5 Pokemon, but they're all chipped. Bam, Bellossom sets up, sweeps all 5 Pokemon. Now you have a +5 differential. Not to mention you have that Fake Out Parting Shot set to get Bellossom in free, or you have a teleport set with Gallade. You have Screens teleport with Gallade to get Bellossom in. I think Bellossom is a phenomenal pick for his team. His team is super offensive. No reason why you couldn't. The other options were Komala. Now, Komala would help him with this Ghost weakness that he has going, especially if he brings in Articuno G. Komala being able to immune that Ghost type attack, having strong special defense, and have rapid spin and just 3 different attacks. I think it kind of fits in with his team in terms of the offensive capabilities. It does have Wish Passing as well. I think it is a certainly viable option for his team. And then last but not least was Silvally Normal. Just a pivot Pokemon, can set up, can be kind of be whatever he needs it to be. Silvally's at T5, I just think are phenomenal options for anybody, so especially if they need to find something to fit into their team. But yeah, that's as much as I got to say about Blade's team here. My bad that this one was almost 60 minutes long, but I did a lot more research. Don't know why. Just, I guess, was in the mood to do way more research than I normally do. Not even way more, just, I guess, organized it better so that I could talk about points better. But yeah, thanks for sticking around, and I hope you guys will stick around for the next ones.